Hello, good day, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kismar Givens. I am a former Seventh-day Adventist and Christian apologist. And as the title of this video suggests, COVID-19 and the Sabbath. Do not look to turn off turn off this video. You need to hear what I'm saying. This is actually a video that I am most excited about. I've never been so excited about making a video like what I'm excited about making this one. Trust me, you are going to be surprised at what I'm going to actually say to you today. So COVID-19 and the Sabbath, right? COVID-19, as I've stressed in my video before, that the COVID-19 situation may have a lot of good in it. One of the present good that I want to elaborate on in this video is the good that it did in exposing the whole, sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, but sometimes I believe I just have to say the truth, whether it offends or not. But I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic, it actually exposes Sabbatarians. I'm very sorry to say if I hurt your feelings or offend you. My sincere apology, but I don't know how better to actually say what I'm going to say just now. Right? Unfortunately, it makes Sabbatarians look like hypocrites. And this is one of the things I realize about COVID-19 situation. It really exposes them. What we find from COVID-19 situation is that while Sabbatarians claim that the whole Sabbath keeping is a moral law, based on their attitude towards it now, they are in fact treating it as though it's a ritual law and not a moral law. And we former Adventists and we non-Sabbatarians has been saying this for eons, that the Sabbath cannot be a moral law, and they are still adamant about it being a moral law. What do they have to say about it now? How is it that it's a moral law and so many of you are not attending church at this present time? Since the pandemic, there are several Seventh-day Adventists, right, who they haven't been to church on Saturday for so long. Right? They haven't been to Saturday. If it is moral, why aren't you keep it? No, let me just say this, right? That Seventh-day Adventists, one of the way, and Sabbatarians, one of the way in which they say the Sabbath is to be kept is that Luke 4:16, Jesus went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. It was his custom to do so. They will often, that is one of their signature texts that they use, and then they'll say, we should walk as how Jesus walked and so forth. So just as how he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, we should go to church on Sabbath. So going to church on Sabbath or Saturday constitute keeping the Sabbath day. It therefore means then that not going to church on Saturday constitute breaking Sabbath keeping. That's what it means. You understand? So anyone who doesn't go to church on Saturday, you're breaking it. Going to church on Saturday is a part of keeping the Sabbath holy. Where are they now? None of them are not going to church on Saturday now. You understand? So it took a pandemic to actually shake them. I bet many of them are so dumbfounded at this present time. And if you point this to them, trust me, you're bound to cause them to be in a state of shock. They won't even know how to properly answer you, many of them. How is it that you say that we should go to church? No, you're not going to church. And here's the excuse that they are going to give. They are going to say that, boy, we have to obey the government, and the government say we shouldn't open church no more than X amount of people in any gathering and so forth. And due to this circumstance, why they don't go to church. Now, here's my counteraction to that. How they plague and antagonize Sunday worshippers. They say we are following man-made tradition, and they will quote Peter's words. I think it's Acts 5 verse 19, one of those verses, or verse 29. Ye should obey God rather than men. That's what they are going to say, we should obey God rather than men. So since as men put a law saying that you shouldn't go to church on Saturday, right? Why don't you obey God rather than men? God's law said you should go to church on Saturday. So why don't you obey God rather than men and go to church and then get punished? Wouldn't you Wouldn't you actually be a witness to us Sunday worshippers who are worshiping God on a false day? You'd be so much of a great witness to us in demonstrating your faith by obeying God rather than men. Go to church and have the regular gathering on Saturday, get punished, and or contract the COVID-19 disease. Why don't you go and do that then and show your faith? Didn't Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego show their faith by not transgressing the command of God in committing idolatry? And God stood up for them. God stood up for them. So since we're still under that, since we're still under the 10 commandment, that old covenant, right? Since we're still under it, and the Sabbath is a moral law, part of the 10 commandments, we ought to keep it, and part of keeping it is going to church on Saturday. Why don't you demonstrate your faith as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did? As Daniel did. Why don't you demonstrate your faith? Do you know the impact it would have lasted on us Sunday worshippers if you do that? Go to church, risk getting punished, right? The Bible did indeed said we should obey the laws of man in Romans 13. But when it conflicts with God's law, we should obey God rather than men. So since as this what they are doing conflicts with God's law in going to church on the Sabbath and so forth, why don't you stand up for God's law? Since as Sabbath is a moral law. Only if it's a ritual law, that's the only way you can actually do what you did, You understand? In not going to church on Saturday. Only with rituals you can set aside it out of necessity. That's what I did in my study on Jesus broke the Sabbath. And a lot of them jump on my case on it. And look at how they look stupid now. Right? This actually confirms what I did in my video. How Jesus broke the Sabbath. I can post the link for you to view it again. This is the same thing. This is actually what I'm saying, which they oppose. The Sabbath is a ritual law. It's not moral. You can break it or sidestep it out of necessity. It took a pandemic to actually prove my point. Right? It actually take a pandemic to actually no amount of excuse they make. They can because moral law cannot be sidestepped under no circumstances. Not committing idolatry, worshipping any other gods but the Creator God is a moral law that cannot be sidestepped under no circumstances. Right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego demonstrated by their faith by not yielding. You understand? It's a moral code. But with the Sabbath, you can sidestep it. And this is what we've been saying for so long. And see it now? Seventh-day Adventists and all Sabbatarians sidestep the Sabbath commandments. You understand? Out of necessity for their life's sake and to keep the laws of the land. Do you know how much you look like a hypocrite now when you actually judge us Sabbatarians? If I'm doing a job interview, right? And I have hungry kids at home and I am required to work on Saturday, even if it's alternate Saturdays, I can actually sidestep it, take it so that I can bring home food for my loved ones, just as what you did with the COVID-19 pandemic in not going to church. You understand? I can actually do the same thing. And if this even escalate to even worse, you guys may end up have to work your butt off because of this pandemic. Right? I'm sorry if I come off strong, but I'm really hoping that this pandemic wake up the minds of Sabbatarians, set them free from the bondage of legalism and let them realize that we are no longer under the old covenant, right? The new covenant that we are under doesn't require mandatory Sabbath keeping, as I've demonstrated in several of my videos, and the evidence of that is Sabbatarians' own dealing with the whole COVID-19 pandemic and the Sabbath. The Sabbath actually, this pandemic actually proves us former Adventists point. It proves us non-Sabbatarian points. Right? This is what Jesus did. Out of necessity, he broke the Sabbath, just as you do out of necessity and not go to the synagogue. And you're doing so many things to make up for not going to church, working in providing internet online service on the Sabbath and so forth. You see what I'm saying here? Now I'm going to show you something, a short clip, right? With one of their main speaker. His name is Doug Batchelor, in his case in defending the Sabbath. I'm not going to show you the full video. I'll post the link of the video in the description area and or the comment section. So look out for it. But what I'll do is I'll only show a part of the video. You understand? I'll only show a part of the video, how he's defending the Sabbath and how this COVID-19 thing actually refutes his whole argument on the Sabbath. Check out the video.
Healing on the Sabbath day. Luke 14, verse 1, he heals a man of dropsy. That's edema, swelling, buildup of fluid, and it was crippling him. And Jesus now says, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? But they kept silent. So again, he says, you do this for your donkey or an ox. If it had fallen into a pit, you take them out of the Sabbath day. They could not answer him. So he healed the man with dropsy on the Sabbath day. Notice again, he's saying this is in harmony with the law. And then there's the paralytic man who is let down through the roof. And this is the Sabbath day. He heals him. And then he says, take up your bed and go to your house. Well, obviously, you can roll up your sleeping bag and carry it home. If you experience a miraculous healing like that, you might not carry that burden around under normal circumstances. But Jesus was not telling him that the Sabbath did not matter. Then you got the healing of the blind man that we mentioned, and that's John chapter 9. There's certainly nothing wrong with healing a person. You restore their sight. To have your eyes opened on the Sabbath day is a wonderful miracle of God. And all he had to do was wash, and his eyes were open. But they accused him of Sabbath breaking. You'll notice the big issue when Jesus had disputes regarding the Sabbath day in the New Testament is never was it important to keep the Sabbath day. Christ always believed it was important to keep the Sabbath day. Jesus is the one who gave us the Sabbath day. The Bible says all things that were made by him. So he is the one who created for 6 days. He is the one who commanded us to rest on the seventh day. It was Christ who wrote the Ten Commandments in stone. All things that were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. He's not going to break his own law. And he even says, I've kept my Father's commandments. Jesus did not break the Sabbath day, friends. He showed us how to truly keep it. And the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 4 that we should not stumble because of unbelief. There remains therefore the keeping of a Sabbath for the people of God. You don't want to...
Now, as you can see, you see him boldly defending the Sabbath and so forth. Now, I had already addressed many of those arguments, right, which he pointed out in his video, such as Jesus was not breaking the Sabbath, and he has to say that what Jesus was actually doing, right, was to show properly how the Sabbath should be kept. But I object to that, and I'm going to post a link on my video on how Jesus broke the Sabbath. You understand? I'll post a link of that video. What Jesus was showing is that acts of benevolence trumps the Sabbath, and you can break it or sidestep it out of necessity under those special circumstances, thus proving that it's a ritual law and it's no longer more of a necessity. I demonstrated in my video, right, that there was no law before showing that you can do those things what Jesus did on the Sabbath. So he was not showing how Sabbath, he was not merely showing how Sabbath should be kept. There was no law in to that gives allowance for what he did. This is why when he questioned the Jews about is it lawful to do this on the Sabbath day, they could not answer him because there was no law that state that they can do that. And at the same time, they can't say yes because there was no law, and they can't say no. You understand? At the same time, they couldn't say no. So I showed all of that in my video as the reason behind all of that. You understand? I can't go over all of it because it's there in the video for you to watch. To compare and see if what Doug Batchelor is saying is true. Jesus was not merely showing how the Sabbath should be properly kept. No, he was not showing that at all. Because if that was the case, we would have seen in Paul's epistles him actually reiterating the same stuff that Jesus was showing according to them. But he didn't mention anything about keeping Sabbath to the Gentiles. So Jesus was not merely doing that. to the contrary of what Doug Batchelor was saying. Also, he quoted Hebrews 4, verse 9, out of context, saying, there remains a keeping of the Sabbath for the people of God. Hebrews 4, verse 9 doesn't say nothing of the sort. You understand? It doesn't say nothing of the sort. I did a video on Hebrews chapter 4 as well. I'll post the link for that where I refute every single one of their arguments on Hebrews 4, including verse 9, showing that it is not saying that we should keep Sabbath. However, if they want to still argue that it's saying that they should keep Sabbath, why aren't you doing so now? You never have been keeping Sabbath, as no one keep the Sabbath as they are to in this day and age. Right? No one keeps Sabbath, a biblical Sabbath, how they are to in this day and age. They contradict their own self ever so often, just as they're doing now in the COVID-19 pandemic, saying Jesus went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, etc. None of them are going into the synagogue and into church on Sabbath now because of COVID-19. And if this thing stretches out to 6 months, they won't be going to church for the entire 6 months. Tell me if they don't look like a hypocrite now. Why don't you obey God rather than men then, since as it's a moral command? That's what you should do. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did that in obeying the moral command in not worshiping any other God but Jehovah God. So why don't you do the same thing and trust that God will protect you and not let, for your faithfulness, not let the COVID-19 come unto you and protect you from the hand of the governments whose laws you would have transgressed. So I'm sorry, Doug Batchelor, what you're saying cannot work none at all. Seventh-day Adventist, what he's saying cannot work none at all. For COVID-19 alone disprove all of his arguments. You understand? Now, I end on this note. This was not a study, but a mere discussion, right? Look at the videos. Hebrews 4. Exegetical study on Hebrews 4 and Jesus broke the Sabbath. Check it out and match it again with what Pastor Doug Batchelor is saying. Also, my previous video that I did on COVID-19, I'm gonna post the link as well. Just look at those three videos and just meditate on it while you have the time. Right? This is the good that COVID-19 did in setting Sabbatarians free from the bondage of legalism. As long as time shall pass, I don't know about anyone else, but I for one will always use this pandemic against Sabbatarians. Whenever they come and they want to judge me, I'm going to ask you, when did you become a Sabbatarian? If it's before the time of the COVID-19 saga, I'm going to ask, what did you do during this COVID-19 saga? Did you go to church on the Sabbath day? If your answer is no, do not come to me and tell me that I must keep Sabbath and that I must go to church on Saturday. Don't come to me with that garbage. If you didn't do it, you're a hypocrite. You understand? I'm going to use this argument against you. I'm very sorry. Now it's time for you to embrace the gospel. Days of worship is completely irrelevant. You can worship God any day you please. You notice how this pandemic doesn't affect Sunday worshipers. It doesn't. We teach that we can worship God any day. You understand? We can worship God any day. As a matter of fact, worship for us is not confined to the building as it is confined just as Sabbatarians. You must go to church on the Sabbath day. That means worshiping God is confined to a building for them. We are not affected, We can have our worship online until this thing has passed. Our teaching is not in jeopardy. We don't look like hypocrites. You understand? Because we don't teach those garbage as what they teach. You understand? So we are not in problem. Our theology is not in problem. Theirs is in problem. Please, I'm begging you, evaluate this Sabbath situation. COVID-19 is here for this reason, one of this reason, to set you free from the bondage of legalism, the bondage of the old covenant. Embrace new covenant theology, right? In liberty in Jesus Christ. To eat as you want, yes, eat as you want, and worship God on any day as you so please. I do hope that you enjoy this video, right? If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment where necessary, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell icon so that you can receive notifications whenever I make new uploads. And last but not least, share this video with whom you know will benefit from an amazing video like this. Bye bye now.